1479 BC. The death of Pharaoh Thutmose II leaves a power vacuum in Egypt's royal palace. His son by a harem girl, Thutmose III, is proclaimed king, but he is a young child and can't rule alone. So the widowed queen, Hatshepsut, steps in to fill the power vacuum. She becomes the young boy's co-regent, but she rules like a full-fledged pharaoh.
Hatshepsut begins to seize more and more actual political power, and by the 7th year of the joint reign of Hatshepsut and Thutmose III, Hatshepsut actually calls herself king.
Hatshepsut was not supposed to be a king, because in ancient Egypt, men only has to rule, women cannot rule.
To take her gender out of the equation, Hatshepsut simply switches it.
Her body takes on the contours of a male, and she wears the traditional strap-on beard of Egypt, and her body doesn't show female characteristics.
To be taken seriously as pharaoh, Hatshepsut knows she needs to build like one. So to immortalize her reign for the ages, she commissions a massive mortuary temple on the west bank of Thebes, the hometown and power base of the new kingdom pharaohs. It will serve as a shrine to her spirit after death and perpetuate her connection to the gods. To build it, she turns to her chief architect, Senenmut. He is a commoner who enjoys a very special relationship with the female pharaoh.
A lot of people like to think that Hatshepsut and Senenmut were more than professional friends. And certainly there is some very obscene graffiti with their names over them, showing them in sort of compromising positions that adds fuel to the rumor.
Regardless of his amorous talents, Senenmut would prove to be a masterful engineer. Hatshepsut's temple at Deir el-Bahri is the enduring proof of his genius and a testament to his undying devotion.
He did this from the emotion of love. It's not really as a duty to the queen. No, he did it for his lover, Hatshepsut. And therefore, the temple is unique. It's different from any temple ever built in Egypt.
Today, the temple is surrounded by barren desert. But in ancient times, landscaped gardens and pools would have made it one of the most lavish monuments in the world. The temple rises in 3 levels of terraces built into the slope of a towering limestone cliff. The terraces are connected to each other by a broad central staircase. The upper levels are supported underneath by long colonnaded porticos. On the walls inside one of them are reliefs depicting Hatshepsut's divine conception.
Hatshepsut's mortuary temple is really a great vehicle for propaganda. You have a scene showing the god Amun coming to her mother, then there's sort of an intimate moment, after which Hatshepsut is conceived with the help of various goddesses, and then the next scene shows her being greeted with great acclaim by all the gods and being hailed as a divine birthed king.
At Deir el-Bahri, the architect Senenmut succeeded in creating a one-of-a-kind temple for a very unique pharaoh. The project took 15 years to complete, years during which Hatshepsut's stepson Thutmose, the young pharaoh in waiting, quickly came of age. He would soon come knocking to claim his rightful throne. In order to retain her own power, Hatshepsut would launch a PR campaign to remind her subjects that she was descended from a god. And she would engineer a series of towering monuments to drive that message home. Obelisks advertising her link to her divine father, Amun-Ra.
The form of an obelisk is fairly simple. It is a tall, solid, 4-sided tower with a pyramid-shaped tip carved from one piece of stone and decorated from top to bottom in carved relief. Now, at first glance, an obelisk may not seem like much of an engineering feat, but all things considered, it is one of the most stunning and artistic building achievements of all time.
The story of the obelisks begins in the ancient granite quarry at Aswan, 115 miles south of Thebes. This is where most of the Egyptian obelisks originated, and where one still lies unfinished, carved out on 3 sides.
At 137 feet long and weighing over 1,100 tons, I am standing on what would have been the world's largest obelisk had it been completed. It was abandoned when it was cracked, but today this obelisk can still give us a clear idea of how these things were quarried out. Now, workmen pounded away at this granite using a dolerite ball like this one. Dolerite is harder than granite, so if you pound hard enough and long enough, the dolerite will eventually chip away at it. To cut out an obelisk this big, experts figure it took about 130 men a full year. So can you imagine pounding and pounding and working for a full year of your life just to have the thing you're working on crack, and then you gotta walk away? Well, in one way they were lucky. They didn't have to move it.
Once an obelisk was finally freed from its granite foundation, the next challenge was to transport it, often hundreds of miles, to its final destination. To do this, Egypt's engineers turned to old reliable, the Nile, and used the yearly flood to their advantage.
The problem with transporting great stone blocks, statues, and obelisks would have been that these displaced an enormous amount of water, and the bottoms of the boats would, in various points along the Nile, have scraped or even gotten stuck. And so it was preferable to try to move these great pieces of stone only during the inundation season, when the rising waters of the Nile created a much deeper bed.
After the obelisk was shipped downriver to its permanent home, engineers faced their final and most formidable hurdle: raising it. How exactly they did it remains a mystery, but there is one prevailing theory about the process. First, builders would install a granite base strong enough to bear the weight of the obelisk. Next, they would surround that base with an enclosure wall made of mud brick. That enclosure would then be filled with sand. On 2 sides of the wall, mud brick ramps would be erected. Using ropes and a series of sleds laid underneath the obelisk, it would be pulled up one ramp by laborers descending the other until it rested upright on the sand. The sand would then be dug away gradually as laborers continued to pull the obelisk toward vertical until it landed squarely on its base. Sadly for Hatshepsut, her reign didn't end so smoothly. Around 1459 BC, her beloved architect Senenmut suddenly disappeared without a trace. The following year, the pharaoh herself perished under mysterious circumstances. Egypt's most powerful female, the patron of the empire's most stunningly modern architectural feat, faded silently into history.